I hope this finds you doing well. As we're going through the book of Judges, we are looking now at the story of Samson, which many people will have recollections of. And in chapter 13, we saw the calling of Samson to be a Nazirite, one who would never cut his hair, one who would never eat or drink anything from the vine. And this was a divine calling that came to his mother and his father, that when she conceived, she would raise him in this manner, one who was devoted wholly to God. And he was indwelt and empowered by the Spirit. But as you read through Judges 14, you're going to see that Samson did gain this power, but he didn't always yield to the control of the Spirit. So he, in the very beginning, verses 1 through 4, we see that he goes down to the Philistines and he finds a woman that he's interested in to be married. And his parents protested, of course, because why wouldn't he marry someone in his own tribe or his own people? But what they didn't understand was that God was going to use this as an occasion to create offense and begin to use Samson to deliver the people. In that day, it was very common for parents of the groom to negotiate with the parents of the bride what responsibilities each would have, and a date, and sometimes a dowry, and frequently it would be between several weeks, months, or even a year before the wedding took place. So his parents relent and they go down and they make an agreement. And then we see this beautiful empowering in verses 5 through 7. As they're journeying down, Samson is attacked by a lion, and he tears that lion apart with his own hands by the power of the Spirit of God, and shreds it like as if it were just a tiny baby goat. And he doesn't say anything about it to anybody. And so he goes down, they make the contract, and they return home. And then after what must have been somewhere close to a year, they return for the wedding feast. But the return for the wedding feast is where we see the first real offense. So in verse 8 and 9, he returns to consummate the marriage and to have the feast. And as he journeys down, he notices where he had killed the lion, but he finds that bees had made a hive in the skin of that lion, and he sees the honey, and he takes up the honey and eats it and gives it to his parents, and doesn't even tell them where he came upon the honey or about the lion. And they return, and the wedding feast begins. And so at the wedding, it was normal for there to be a grand celebration, a party, and this wedding feast was to last the whole week, a week of celebration. And because Samson was from Israel and had no Philistine friends, the family brought to him 30 companions to be by his side as they celebrated the wedding. And so Samson, I guess as a part of the festivities, gives them a riddle. He tells them, you give me each of you, 30 people, a cloak and a change of clothes, a linen garment, which they would wear around their inner clothing. And he says, if you can tell me the answer, I'll give each of you a piece of linen and clothes. But if you can't tell me the riddle, then you'll owe me that. And so he gives them the riddle. He said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. So he makes a riddle based on his own experience with finding the sweet honey in the carcass of the lion. Now then in verse 15 through 18, you see that they're quite troubled because the 7 days of the wedding feast and the third day, they have no idea. And so they come to his wife and they threaten her. They say, if you don't get your husband to tell us the answer, we're going to burn you and your father's house. And so his wife, wept over him. She says, you don't love me. You only hate me. You've put this riddle before my people and you haven't told me the answer. And they were angry because they felt like they were going to be impoverished. Their carnality is obvious. And Samson, on the seventh day, finally relents to the pleading of his wife and tells her, and then she tells the people, and they come to him and they say, what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? You see in verse 17, the anger of Samson is stirred up, and he says, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. Samson is learning something about how women have an effect on him. That if they pressure him, if they weep over him, then he will give in and he will give the answer. You see the character of the oppressors, willing to burn down and kill just so they wouldn't lose out on a bet, willing to destroy randomly. And then in verse 19, it says, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him and went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town and took the spoil, and he gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. And in hot anger, he went back to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companions who had been his best man. Normally, Israel wouldn't collect the clothing of the dead that they killed in battle. But here, Samson not only kills 30 men just by his own power or the power of the Holy Spirit upon him, he takes those garments and uses it to pay off the 30 men. But he departs in hot anger. And apparently, the wife's father thought he didn't want her anymore and gave her to one of the companions, his best man. Well, some time passes, and Samson changes his mind. His anger has been satisfied or pacified, and he goes down to retrieve his wife. And we'll look better or at that in more detail in the next time when we look at Judges 15. But I think there's an important lesson to learn, that God calls us and he empowers us. He came upon Samson when Samson needed that power to overcome the lion. He gives Samson that power so that he can kill without any weapons 30 men because of the power of the Spirit. But he was moved and pressured to give in when he was besought upon by his wife. And we'll see it becomes a pattern that he will respond in anger. There's a place for anger in the Christian life. There were times when God was angry. There were times when we see that Jesus demonstrated anger. But there's also cautions that we should never let the sun go down on our anger, that we should be angry but sin not. And this was the lesson that Samson was failing to learn. God was still going to use him. And God still uses us even in our failures. But let the Spirit of God who lives in you stir you. And know that you don't have to have great physical power like Samson for God to use you in delivering others from the bondage of the enemy. His Spirit is in you so he can live through you and proclaim the good news to a hurting world. And I hope that you'll look for those opportunities all throughout the week. Have a great day.